Hey baddies, a content warning for this episode. As you have likely seen, this episode is on disordered eating. We will talk about eating disorders and food specifics. I appreciate that Bri shares from her own experience and shares ways that she has healed her relationship with food. So it might be a helpful episode, but of course not if it is triggering. Take care of yourselves, baddies.
And having to unlink the word fat to not being beautiful, because if I say I'm fat and then my friend says, no, you're beautiful, I didn't say I was a beautiful girl, I said I was fat. And so
Okay. 1, 2, ready, go.
Welcome to the Called to Be Bad podcast. My name is Mariah Martin, and I feel called to be bad. It turns out I'm not the only one. Join us as we dig into all things bad, scandalous, deviant, you know, the stuff that makes good church folks squirm in the sanctuary. Why? Well, because sometimes the scandalous is spiritual, deviant is divine, and bad is beautiful. Say yes to the call, and let's see what holy trouble we get into today. Hi, Bri.
hi, how are you?
Good. Welcome to Called to Be Bad. So this is Bri Ragan, and sorry I didn't ask your pronouns beforehand.
She, her, you're good.
Okay, so she's going to introduce herself today for us. So take it away, Bri.
My name is Bri. I live in Springfield, Ohio. I met Mariah through a group on Facebook that we mutually connected through, and thought the podcast sounded interesting and just wanted to join and talk about it and talk a lot about it. It's something I'm passionate about, so I'm excited.
And so today we are going to talk about disordered eating and or diet culture. But before we get into that, what are you drinking today, Bri?
So I am having a pineapple and rum in my Good Things Will Happen cup. What about you? What are you drinking?
I have coffee this morning. I need to write a sermon. Otherwise, I would love to be having pineapple and rum. And my mug, I didn't really have anything that would have anything to do with disordered eating, which makes sense on it.
yeah,
yes. But I have one that says, so I got it from these friends that are from the Netherlands. Shout out to Art and Karen. They're really good friends with my spouse's family. Nick's dad is Dutch, and so anyways, they started listening to the podcast and know I love mugs. And so when they came to the US for a visit, they brought me a mug that says, "You are pretty fucking awesome. Keep that shit up."
I love that.
So this is a message to you, Bri, to all of the baddies listening, and in particular to anyone who struggles with food or disordered eating or diet culture. You're pretty fucking awesome. Keep it up. Keep that shit up. Hello, beloved baddies. A quick break to tell you that this episode is sponsored by the Center for Art, Humor, and Soul, a nonprofit that supports and amplifies the voices of edgewalkers through art that catalyzes change, laughter that brings us together, and soul awakening to the creative spark within us. The support from the Center for Art, Humor, and Soul has meant the world to this podcast, so I highly encourage you to check out their website, arthumorandsoul.com, to see their other featured artists and projects. If you want to support the podcast, you can check out our Patreon or get in touch. Now I'll let you get back to this episode of Called to Be Bad. So, on the podcast, we often start with definitions. And so how do you, Bri, define disordered eating? And do we want to talk about what is disordered eating and what is diet culture, or how does disordered eating fit within diet culture?
I definitely think the two intersect.
Yeah.
And so that's why, for me, it's both of those there's this and there's this, but oftentimes I feel like it's all. I feel like that's what I guess we'll get into is I think that everybody has a little bit of disordered eating.
Yeah. Okay. So what is disordered eating?
So for me, I sort of define it as a different relationship with food other than I'm allowed to eat when I'm hungry and I'm allowed to have a sweet treat when I anything other than just allowing yourself to eat when you want to eat. And so for me personally, it sort of is defined by what food is good or bad. If you have a relationship with food like that, or intermittent fasting where it's I have to do this, and if you have to do something in order to eat, that's disordered eating. If it's a time thing, so anything literally other than saying that chocolate chip cookie sounds good. I'm allowed to eat it. So that's sort of that. And I do want to like mention and honor also the difference between disordered eating and eating disorders. Because I think that while everyone can have disordered eating, because we've all, again, diet culture, which is where that loops in, but I think there is a difference in that versus, I have friends who have diagnosed, eating disorders that have had just different struggles than I have. So I always want to make sure that I honor that too, of like, I don't want to claim. So I have disordered eating, but it's just different than what other people have. And so I don't want to dismiss anybody.
Okay. So there's a difference between disordered eating and having a diagnosed eating disorder.
Yeah. And I think you could even have both, of course, because I guess because we'll do the trigger warning. Is it okay if I just say, like, I always want to make sure
yes.
Okay. So I have just friends who have like anorexia, things like that, who, or binge eating. And so for that, it's in my mind a little bit different because I'll just speak on myself. And I guess for me, like my disordered eating was either I'm not allowed or time consumption, or I have to do this in order to get this. And, or then because of the restriction, then binge eating. And that plays into mental health things for myself as well. And I think in general purposes, but that definitely interlooped with my depression for sure. And like, then thrived on that. And then, just comforts and depression and things like that. So it's hard because mental health and eating is so linked, to separate the conversations, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that makes so much sense. I really love that definition. I've never heard it said exactly like that. And so would it be fair to say that disordered eating can lead to eating disorders?
Oh yeah, most certainly. Because I think I think that's how it begins. Is maybe we don't even realize the restriction.
Yeah.
That's happening. I think that's for me. I would had not, because I think I had multiple friends, close friends, and family members with diagnosed eating disorders. I didn't realize that I was almost saying, well, because I'm not that, then and so I didn't realize that my restriction. And so, to whereas maybe they had issues where they needed to go to the bathroom and, make themselves do something, things like that. Mine was just overeating and or time restriction, or I didn't work out today, so I'm not allowed to have the Reese's cup. Reese's are my favorite. And so for me, becoming in a more mutual place with my body, and I call it body neutrality, is how I got out of diet culture. And so for me, the neutrality becomes, I saw that, I want it, I'm allowed to have it, and I could have sat around all day. So, and no matter what it is, that for me was a big thing, is I don't have to be a good person that day in terms of whether that's exercise or whatever. Even on my bad days, I don't want to be bad or a bad person, but I'm allowed to have it no matter where. Like my worth and value doesn't change. So I'm allowed to have the Reese's whenever I want to, and I'm allowed to have the food, and I'm allowed to go stop at McDonald's when I want. And so I had to pull back on the restriction, because there's healthiness, of course, and there is that you can get into that. I just think we link way too much with what we think physical health is to what we're actually doing. So.
Yeah. So when you were saying like time constraints, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm. So it can be both. I think it can be if you want to do the restriction, or I just lost it when people fast. Sorry. So a lot of people will do intermittent fasting. So there can be that of, I'm not going to eat until my window has to be 11 to 6. So there's that, or it's I'm not allowed to eat past a certain time. So that's still almost intermittent, or I'm not allowed to have sweets. So it can be the time specific of when you're allowed to or when you're not allowed to. Or I know some people, to get into specifics, so it's like I can eat it. What I can get in 30 minutes is what I can get all day long, and that's it. And so it's that restriction. So, and then even, I guess, times of like, it can get into, which is I think where diet culture comes into, of, and these things can be used healthily. I also want to say that is there are certain health, concerns, especially for diabetes, things like that, where we get into keto and things like, I work in the health industry. So I see like the big picture, all of it. And I still even struggle with myself. And so I think I don't want to dismiss real health problems, but I do think that they're used to, I can only eat every 2 hours. I need to eat this. I'm not allowed to eat full meals. So time in general, whether it's restriction or in this amount of time or this amount of time, I think it can be very damaging to your psyche and your body.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Oh my goodness, my mind is going so many ways. Yeah. So before we get into like kind of the nitty-gritty of disordered eating and diet culture, I want to hear your story, like how you have, what your relationship with food has been like, is like, and of course only share what you feel comfortable with, but
yeah. So it's, from a young age, it's hard because my food, where it plays into my adult life now, so I have to almost explain the backstory, is growing up in a relatively poor family, and just a lot of trauma there in general, but that leads to then finances, and then finances lead into what you can get. And so I grew up in a home that either was all boxed or fast food because mom had to go to work or we didn't have money, so it's cheaper to do that. So that develops into taste palette, and like things like never eating vegetables. I like fruits. I can eat fruits all day long still. But even canned fruit. So it starts from a very young age of what people have in their homes and what privilege. I think privilege is a huge conversation in food as well, and everything. But
yes.
So yeah, it starts at a young age of being restricted. Not, I wouldn't have called it restriction then. I didn't know that's what, I know that other people sit around the table and eat together after their parents or whoever their caregiver or their guardian has, cooked, but I don't always do that. Or, we just make a PB&J for the night, or I'm addicted to cereal. I always have been. That's more so of a safe meal, I think, from ADHD, but I grew up eating a lot of cereal because I was so picky. So how that played into teenager and on is now I don't like a lot of foods. So it led to binge eating a lot of unhealthy foods, or what I at the time would have called unhealthy foods. And so it's that hard balance of I need to take my general wellness into consideration, but also not know I didn't have that language then. And so I just thought I was eating bad. And so a lot of fast food, a lot of cheap food, a lot of, hamburger helper, things like that. And so then again, like even graduating young life up really until the last few years, I would say I started really diving into workout. It started with me trying to lose weight. And so I'll say that of like, the bigger picture of me finally realizing where all this was interchanging together and how it all connected. So really up until probably about 2017, did I really not even realize I had disordered eating, or didn't realize that like I was restricting so much. And then I had some health concerns going on. I got diagnosed with PCOS, and I have a family history on my mom's side and dad's side. I don't know as much there because he wasn't around, but they have, I think, like cervical cancer, and then mom's side of breast cancer and things like that. And so I was going to the doctor for just general things. I had to learn what PCOS was. And so that involves like of eating. And they started talking about just the need to lose weight. And so that for me became, because the doctor that I had at the time was only making it about that, I became extremely obsessed, thinking in order to be healthy and be okay and lower this risk, it's only about weight. And because they were making it seem I need you to lose, this % of your body fat. And so, and I had gotten used to that, of going to the doctor every time. That's all they want to talk about is weight. They think that weight relates to everything. Yeah. So I started working out a ton and started trying to eat different foods. And really all that led to is eating a bunch of bland food every single day of the week. And then what that led to was not eating. And that led to, I can't eat another piece of baked chicken. This is like the 6th month in a row. And I can't keep eating eggs and cheese every single day for breakfast. And it was just the same meals, which was already hard because I'm already so picky. So because I'm already so picky, I'm already so limited. And then now I'm limiting myself even more. So I went from extreme binge eating to sort of moderate to now it's unhealthy and I have to lose all this weight. And then that plays into my mental health, and that plays into what I think of myself and my worth and value, and all the things. So in 2017 is when that started, but then I would say 2018, 2019, like right before the pandemic hit, is the first time I had heard of the term body neutrality. And so for that, I started, because of ADHD, I dove right into that and researched all the things and followed all the TikTok accounts and followed all the social media accounts and just learned at that. And it really was, for me, the beginning of separating my worth and value to my weight, and realizing really, and it's almost funny because now I'm just like, I just don't think about that anymore. And if you would have said that to me a few years ago, I'd have been like, okay, well, you're a bitch, because of course I'm thinking about what I look like, and of course this, and I can't wear this because I'm a fat woman, and having to unlink the word fat to not being beautiful, because if I say I'm fat and then my friend says, no, you're beautiful, I didn't say I wasn't beautiful, girl, I said I was fat. And so it's just things like that. So I just like, that's the attitude I had to take on, and I just started seeing little challenges. There was this account that I followed, and her name is her account name is escaping me, but her name is Julia. And I just learned a lot from her. And she even said things of like we're so used to pulling our shirts away from our stomachs and having to do this in high-waisted pants. And so the challenge was like, see how many days in a row, if it's one day, if it's a half hour, even like do what you can. And the minute you start thinking about something, almost just do it. And for me, because I have ADHD, I was like, I guess I can just go on a different thought loop. So as soon as I would start to pull, I would literally do it. And it was slow. I'm talking years now. It's been years. And it's been a journey of like unlearning like behaviors that I was conscious of, or didn't even realize how much I'm looking at myself, and how much my thoughts were consumed literally by what I look like and what I'm eating. And just having to undo that. And it's very hard. I'm still doing it. I'm still learning. And, I just think a lot of it for me has been the food. I can't restrict myself anymore. And that has come and gone in waves. It's come in times where I've maybe even for actual health concerns, maybe done too much or whatever. But and what's ironic about it is now I'm the healthiest I've been mentally health wise and body wise, but I think it's because of that. I think because I started undoing it, my body just literally naturally whatever. And so now I'm a lot of the same weight. My weight has fluctuated, but not compared to where I was at during my heaviest. And for me, I think I actually really appreciate that I started figuring this out while I was at my heaviest, because I did do the thing. I did lose all the weight and I gained it all back, because that was 2017. So like by 2019, I had met my goal weight. And still didn't like it. Still was like, I'm not attractive. I'm still, this boy at church that I want to like me isn't even paying attention to me still. And I thought that if I wasn't fat anymore. And so it's just, you link all of these things: church, mental health, your worth and value as a human. And so, and your body physically responds to those things. So not only do we already have disordered eating and eating disorders, now because of everything else is hitting each other, it's just a trickle down effect, and it just keeps going and going and going. And that's what sucks about diet culture, is we address weight and that's it. And it's not that. And then if you want to bring in things such as race and privilege and where you grow up and socioeconomic status and all those things, like, they just don't realize how big it is. It's not just weight, and it's not just work out every day and eat chicken every day and, cracker all egg over your head every day. Like, it's not, like, it's not just that. We have to address everything when we're talking about health, because general wellness has to be more important. And typically that's what research finds, is when it's linked and when you do all of the things, your general wellness, your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, all of that.
Oh my goodness. I am furious at your doctors for just bringing everything back to weight. Like, that's so problematic. And like,
it is. And they didn't even fix it, which is, it actually got worse when I was losing weight, which is the ironic part of it. Yeah. And I started saying too, when I learned about the body neutrality, part of what Julia taught me was like, when you have to go to every single doctor's appointment, there's no real reason for them to know your weight. So you can either say, for certain appointments it is, and especially when I started working in the medical industry, I found that out, and I was like, oh, we're just doing all these things unnecessarily. So there's that. But then she said, if you feel like you have to, if you can't say no yet, maybe a smaller step is turn around on the scale. You don't look at it. So I've done that literally since probably 2018, 20. I've never looked at the scale at the doctor's office.
Yeah, I was dying when you were talking about learning about body neutrality on TikTok. Like, I was like,
TikTok changed my life.
I have never had a unique experience in my life. Like, I learned so much about disordered eating and diet culture on TikTok, like during the pandemic, is when it all happened. And learning phrases like weight does not equal health, and like just like overemphasizing the number on the scale, like that does not lead to overall wellness and health at every size, like those kind of
health at every size is such a good move.
And intuitive eating. Like, I learned all of that on TikTok. And comfort food, or not comfort foods, safe foods. And I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense, because like, I don't really think of myself as particularly like a picky eater. There's like some things I don't like, but there's some foods that I can always have. And just realizing that it is incredibly helpful if I always have those foods available. Like, oh my goodness, yeah.
Yes, that's for me, because especially once I got diagnosed with my ADHD and I started medication, I, sometimes was already struggling with the ADHD eating, but it really suppressed my appetite. So for me, I also had to learn of, maybe this meal, old Bri would have struggled to eat this meal late at night. And it's, I'm talking about food. Grilled cheese and fries is like one of my biggest safe meals, but then I had to learn it's okay to have that at 10 o'clock at night because I'm eating, and always having that available instead of like, well, I just won't get as much bread. I mean, I used to do that, or like just little things, or just having small snacks available, things that I can eat quick, or like a yogurt or something like that. Like, I'm just allowed to have these things now, and just not restrictive.
Oh, this is bringing up so many like memories. Like, I remember talking with friends, and my friend who is a nurse was talking about how it is incredibly difficult to lose weight. Like, to do again, we're talking about weight, but to do like calorie deficit, like how difficult that is. And for some reason that like stuck in my head. And I remember doing things like, I would bike to where I was house sitting, and I wanted to have a beer, but I was like, oh, like, I don't want to gain weight, because I was worried about, like, I didn't think of myself as fat, but I didn't want to. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, but I didn't. That's not how I viewed myself. But I was like, I don't want to get to the point where it's hard to like I don't want to become something that I don't recognize.
Yes, it's even harder.
Which is just like, also, again, like, sucked into that like control.
I believe we all have fat phobia. I think fat people have fat phobia.
Yes. very much fat phobic. And so I remember doing jumping jacks before I would have this beer. And again, like, it's just like so easy to slip into that, like, food is a reward. You have to do X, Y, and Z before you eat, or like, yeah, just all those restrictions.
And because if I don't, then I lose. If I don't, then I lose the attention. If I don't, then I lose how I feel about myself, which is already not good, which is the ironic part. What am I losing? I already feel worse about myself. Like, I don't feel good about it. So I'm really not losing anything. Like,
I wonder also if there's, like, I might be jumping ahead, but I wonder if there is some link to, like, Christian values as far as being, like what you were talking about, like, being a good person, and, like, a good person does X, Y, and Z, or a bad person, you know, like, and somehow then we link, like, being a good or a bad person to, like, your health and weight.
yes, I was going to say I can answer that question now, because I
Yeah,
definitely,
do it.
like, it was funny because before the podcast I thought, here's a small part for me, but as we've been talking, I think I've been realizing more a little bit. So for me, well, that question was actually a little smaller. It was almost in the more so what I look like, but of course weight plays into that, because for me the faith background was not only talking about gluttony, and even things that are supposed to be fun like trunk or treat, since we can't go trick or treating, and then eventually we went trick or treating, no worries, but even that, like talking about gluttony and that, and that's, and the church dismisses that, which is, I could go into that, of the way that we talk about getting all of our needs met by God, and not being gluttonous, and not being, oh, if you just ask, God can provide it. He knows the desires of your heart. And so that's hard, because I come from a poor family. So if he knows the desires of my heart, I want my mom to eat tonight too, because I had to grow up in that, of like my mom making sure that we ate, and maybe she didn't eat as much that night, or she's like, oh, I just want a banana. And then as a kid being like, okay, mom, I didn't believe her all the time, but then you get a teenager and you know that's happening, and then adult. And we've since discussed it. So it's all of that. It's the way the church talks about what they think they're talking about, but they're talking about so much more. And so that plays into the good or the bad. I very much, and still am unlearning that. I talk about it a lot in counseling, when I'm talking about the deconstruction conversations. It's a lot of unlearning what makes me good or bad. And so food plays. My therapist said something to me that really stuck with me. She said, when we're talking about like worth and value, and what you're allowed to eat and what you're allowed to do, and even if you're too much or not, like all of that, too much, not enough in anything, she's like, you're doing it as if it's only, you only get that when you're a good person. She said, but the worst Bri, the Bri that's a bitch, the Bri that's selfish, the Bri that overeats, undereats, the Bri that struggles with money, doesn't struggle, the Bri that believes in God and doesn't, still deserves all of those things. You have to get out of your head that it's only when you're a good person can you have these. And just realizing how much the church has steeped in that, of we are separated, which is ironic because we talk about community and being together. So the church, I feel like, separates us in so much, and it's hard because, again, being told when I was overeating or even undereating, that had to do with my depression. And are you fasting? You're praying enough? Because if you were praying enough, you wouldn't be depressed, which then wouldn't lead to the eating issues. Meanwhile, they have no idea what's going on at school, at home, in my family, in my like young adult romantic life. Like, they have no idea what other factors. And so it's just hard when we speak in general terms about anything, because you don't know what else you're triggering. And so I think that's in general as a society, but especially the church, we need to address all of the factors. We need to address finances and poverty levels and privilege levels, because that is part of the conversation.
Oh my, it's so connected. So I'm thinking about like Christianity and the church, and it was pointed out to me, like, think about how much we talk about food in church. And I was like, what? But communion, potlucks,
Yes.
a lot of them,
Small
church,
groups.
small groups, a lot of that, it's all centered around food and the table. And there's like beautiful metaphors about bread and food and eating and banquets, and they're beautiful to me, but to others that could be very triggering. So man, what do we do with that?
That's the tough part, is because I mean, I have, but like in passing, I don't go to church anymore. I don't really believe in God anymore. There's still so much I'm processing, deconstructing. But if I were to be in church still, and I'm part of that community, that's what I would want, is let's talk about what's really happening. There's this book that has to do with disordered eating, but it's in general, and it's called The Body Is Not an Apology.
Oh,
And it's by Sonia Renee Taylor. Yes. And I love that book. And she talks about intersectionality in that. And I think if the church could understand intersectionality in all forms, that if I were to believe in the God of the Bible that I used to, that's what I want church to look like. And even now, as a person who doesn't, if you ask me, I would not say I'm a believer. I still deeply care about community. I still deeply care about I think, love still conquers all, and there's still that idea of deeply loving someone and knowing someone does change the world. Mm-hmm. But even if it's one person, that's how the world changes, because then we're in our community. And so the church needs to get involved. The church does not address what they need to address. And so how can we talk about food? We do need to, because food is that's the most simple, basic human need. So maybe we should actually start with food and go from there. Let's invite our neighbors to eat with us, and to not talk about food while we eat it. Saying, like, just let people eat what they want to eat, and then let's address everything. Because if I don't know you, I can't respect you. And if I don't respect you, then I can't talk about all this. Or how can I be respectful to what you think and what I think? And so maybe we can. Maybe food can be healthy.
Yeah. So potentially the table or table fellowship could be a healing place,
yes,
for people with disordered eating, if it is handled with grace and sensitivity and
yes,
respect that you're talking about when you actually know people, and not talk about like, oh, you're not eating much today, or like, oh wow, somebody's hungry, like if
somebody's exact for me. Amy Poehler says, what's good for you doesn't have to be what's good for me.
Oh, I love that. What's good for you doesn't have to be good for me. So, kind of along those lines, like, what are other little, almost like microaggressions or comments that are just like not helpful, comments that would be better if you kept them to yourself about bodies, food, etc.?
I think not commenting on people's body weights, whether they're losing or they're gaining. You don't have to tell me that you're eating a salad today because you've just been bad all week. So it's just, we don't need to talk about food, and we don't need to talk about bodies. We can if it's like, oh, I'm about to eat this delicious, pizza and breadsticks, and then you say, oh, I'm about to bash this salad. That's a good food conversation, because you didn't say one was good or bad. We're just talking about how delicious this is. Mm-hmm. And don't comment on someone's body, I guess. I don't know. Be aware of where you're having the conversation and who you're talking to, I guess. Those, to sum it up, where you're at and who you're talking to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that you're saying that you can comment on how good food tastes without commenting on like how much or how little you are eating.
That's where I think food can be healing. And so even my friends who eat differently than I do, when we've been able to share that space and eat together, even just because at different time, even with our disordered eating, it's not always been about that. It's sometimes been about when they can't eat and I can. Mm-hmm. And so when you can do that, I think it's I think it's a healing experience. At least it has been for me. Mm-hmm. To enjoy food together.
Yeah, I want to hear more about how you got to the place where you recognize that not restricting is healthier for you, and how if you see something and you want it and you want to eat it, like just doing that and having no restrictions on when, how much, and what you eat, and then also kind of turning off that mentality of like, oh, I shouldn't do this, but I'm gonna, like how kind of getting rid of the taboo of eating certain foods, or thinking of some foods as better than others, like removing that food hierarchy, how that actually leads to health. Can you talk more about that?
Yes, definitely. I think it was on TikTok. They said, can you answer why the food is bad? And so let's take a Reese. I'll use Reese's because I felt bad that I was eating them all the time, or like a bowl of cereal. And so I said, but why is it bad? Is it genuinely, is there something wrong? Is it mean like I'm waking up, I don't feel good and I'm really tired, and then that affects my job? Are there actual legitimate health or spiritual or sleep needs that I'm missing?
Right.
Or is it because I think I can't eat this because then I'm going to gain weight, and it's late at night and it's 10 and they say you can't eat past 8? That's where I call it storytelling. I always have a story going in my head, whether it's good or bad, but what was the storytelling telling me? So she asked that, what are you saying in your head? If you have a legitimate reason, there's a difference. And that's sort of when we get into intuitive eating of, can I be intuitive for what my mind, body, and soul need right now? So sure, if I've eaten 12 cheeseburgers a day for the last 12 weeks, maybe my body does want some fresh fruit. That doesn't make the cheeseburgers bad. It doesn't make the fruit bad or good. It just means that my body needs different things at different times. And my body, allowing myself to say that my body can need a sweet treat, it's just unlinking those. Why is it bad? And even health concerns. I brought up for instance, PCOS, depression, anxiety, things like that. Maybe drinking a sugary drink at night, it's delicious, it's not inherently bad. But because I already have HD, because I already struggle with sleep, and then on top of that I have sleep apnea, and on top of that I have a long day at work, maybe it's not a good idea to stay up another 2 hours. So that is there a legitimate reason? And then just simply doing that, and that took time. That wasn't overnight. So I did that, and maybe I was good at it for a day or two. And then for weeks at a time, I'm just still restricting again, or I'm overeating again. And really, what is overeating? So it's time, and it's learning more. So from there, from addressing why, I think it turned into that sort of helped me be like, oh, well, then why do I care about what my body looks like? And where did I hear this message from? Because if food is bad, why is the food bad? So food is bad because I need to be skinny.
Mm-hmm.
But why do I need to be skinny? Because then a man will love me. At the time, this was when I did not realize I was bisexual. Had a hankering, but wasn't quite sure yet. And so it's like, because I want men to, I wanted men to find me attractive. And when I want to go to the gym and work out to be attractive, I want to look good at the gym. And I want people to notice me. And I want the attention because I've been the fat, funny friend that my friends are getting. And when I go to church and I'm, praise for God, PTL, I want to look good doing it. And when I go to church camp, and then as an adult, even being a young life leader, like, go to Young Life, find your wife. Like, I'm trying to find a husband. And if I can't find a husband, if I'm fat and I'm ugly, because again, I associate being fat with ugly. And so all of it. Why, if you can address why, because the why will lead you into the upward spiral. So when I can address why I think it's bad, then I can address it's bad because my worth and value. But then can I ask why is my worth and value linked to that? And then if it's not, where is my worth and value linked to? And so that became it's inside of me. I could be 1,000 pounds or I could be 92 pounds and I'm still a badass bitch. I still love people well. I'm still funny. I'm still kind. I still have my 2 cats at home. Like, I'm still balling. I'm still chilling. We put so much weight on this when it doesn't weight, ironically. We put so much things to this when it doesn't. We're combining too much. It cannot be that black and white because it simply is not that black and white. Because there is the other half. And again, that's where, because the argument from like gym bros or social media fitness accounts who love to, carb count and restrict and all that say, but there are legitimate health concerns, and there can be, but is that why you're doing it? Is that why you're doing it?
Or
are you
is it
only
because
drinking your coffee,
Yeah.
Am I drinking, this because I'm doing this? And that's with anything. Why am I doing this? And so what I also gained from the church and Young Life Camp was this question I heard in a sermon, and I've applied it to everything. It's 3 questions. Is it working? Does it love you back? And will it last forever? And you can apply that to any. What is, again, you have to define what's working mean for you, and that's individual to your own body and your own needs. Will it love me back? Does restriction love me back? Does restriction make me feel loved? Does it make me feel good? Does my body, my mind, and soul? And will it last forever? Restriction can't. And even binge eating can't last forever, because then eventually you'll kill yourself if you overeat too much, and there is a danger in that, and you have to honor that too. But we make it again so black and white. It's this and restriction and diet culture and this, or it's you eat whatever you want and you're just a fat lard. It's not those. It's not that. And we make it that. And put your money where your mouth is, even if it takes time. So again, that was 2019 for me, and I'm still here. I'm still having to be conscious. It might be a little easier these days, but there's still days where I have to remind myself what being neutral looks like. And I might not like what my stomach looks like, or my arms, or my double chin, but can I be neutral? I'm able to speak, and I'm able to have an opinion, and my legs get me to be able to walk to the coffee shop that I love, and to my car, and I have a mind that can think, and I have a heart that can love. And so can I be neutral about myself? Not physical. It doesn't always have to be about physical.
I love that. Yeah. Say that you are friends with someone and you're noticing how they're talking about their body or talking about food in ways that are raising some red flags. What advice would you give to like the friend or the family member that's like worried about the eating habits of their loved one?
So, and I think what you mentioned when you say friend or family, I think I am only answering as if it's friend or family, because we bring in, again, that relationship aspect of it. So if it was my friend, someone I have that relationship with, or the family member even. So am I answering what I would say to them, or if they came to me and said, I'm concerned about this person, like how?
Yeah, if I came to you and I was like, hey, I'm concerned about how this friend is eating, what should I do? Like, should I say anything? How can I best support them?
Yeah. So I think I would first ask that person. I would say, tell me more about that. Like, where does the concern come from? Because I want to first see if what they're saying is rooted in genuine care and concern, and there is a concern versus, I just think they're putting on too much weight and I'm just not sure,
Right.
I want to separate that. So I first want to say, oh yeah, tell me about that. What's happening? Why are you worried? What's been happening? So hear that from them first. And then I think I would say, just approach them with that. Make it about, try to take body out of it and weight as much as you can. Just say, because, and link it, most times when that's happening, whether it's binge or restriction, their mental health is being affected. Maybe they're distancing or they're too much, or you hear them talking about their body. Make it about those things rather than that if you can.
So more about their general wellness and their
Well-being, yeah, because it's going to be a hard conversation. If we can get in the fact in our head of this conversation is going to be hard and it has the opportunity to go left real quick, you need to go into it with that. And so if you're going into it with that, how can I address it in the best way to where even if they walk away pissed or hurt or confused or in denial, what did they hear when they can sit in that and they can hear it if they can, what did they hear? And so again, why are you concerned? And then say, I've just been noticing that you're not coming out a lot. I feel like I miss going out to drinks with you and dinner and we were doing that. Is there a reason you're not coming anymore? Or like, hey, I've been hearing we used to go get, this meal, or make it about that, or I miss you, or you seem super anxious lately. Is there anything going on with that? Or I think it's almost easier. My friend was telling me about it, like hers. And so I had to see when we're together, how is that person acting when I noticed that when we go to Panera, you didn't really eat all this, so that's your favorite meal, something going on. Like, it's just things like that, is try to make it about how they're feeling and honoring that and wanting them to open up and share that versus, because if you do have disordered eating or an eating disorder, you've had the friend or family member come to you and be concerned, but you're almost validated when it's the skinny comment. When you tell me that I've been losing weight and I'm just really concerned,
they take
because
that as a win.
Yes, I hear it, and that's bad. And people with eating disorders know they're bad. They're not stupid. They know that that's not good, but that's often the only control they have in their life. So people with trauma, people with this, it's a form of control. It's not always sometimes it really isn't. I don't give a fuck what I look like. This is the only space I have control in my life. My job's insane. My family's insane. My marriage is insane. Whatever it is. So when you compliment, it's a compliment. When you come to me or your friend, that's why you have to take their weight out of it in their body. Because if you come to me and say, you've just been eating so much less and you're so tiny now, I'm going to be like, I hear you. But in my head, I'm like, ooh, it's your birthday. You're doing it. Like, I'm hearing that. I can't get that out of my head now. So you just rewarded me and you didn't even know it. So that's why it has to stick to where you haven't been coming around, or you just seem different. You just seem a little more on edge, or you seem like, the other day, or even maybe someone said something to them and you're coming to the friend because their mom said you need to eat a cheeseburger today. Maybe you agree that you're worried about their weight. Don't make it about that. Say, you told me that you were really frustrated when your mom said that to you. Can you talk about why? Like, what did that mean?
What did that bring
it just leads to natural. When the conversation can be natural, it's not at them, it's with them and for them.
Right.
You can't add it. And so that's why you have to be very, very delicate, because even for the people who have, slimmer bodies or things like that, it can be a reward when you bring up that you're concerned for them.
Yeah.
And even me, of like, when people comment on that now of I'm not even trying to lose weight, a lot of it's my meds and current life circumstances that are in my job and all that. And I'm doing pretty good right now, but even having those conversations with people important and close to me saying, hey, I'm good right now because you made that comment, and I know you, and so we can do this. But just to warn you, I'm getting close.
If I'm not in a not good headspace, this could have,
Yes.
Yeah, I
and
like
so
how
just being aware. I would tell them, address why you want to and make it about them, because you do love them. That is where the concern
it's
hopefully
coming
comes
from love.
from. Yeah, hopefully it's coming from love and not a judgment. And so make it about that, and maybe the conversation only starts with that and they shut down. I would encourage you, as a person with that and with friends and people close to me who I thought I should have backed off, and later they've told me I was pissed at you and I didn't want to talk to you, but maybe 2 weeks from now I almost wish that you would have just checked in again, or like, and you can't know that. There's no way for you to know that, right? But I think it is okay to follow up, especially if you can and you have that relationship with someone. And so it's okay to follow up, and it's okay to say, and it's even okay to say, I don't know how to talk about this. Learning that for me about anything, about race, about religion, about sexuality, food, coming to my friends with eating disorders that I know, and maybe even they weren't struggling with it for a while. And I have a friend who is recently getting back into it. And so even coming to her and saying, hey, it's been a long time since we've had these and I'm nervous and I don't want to hurt you because I love you. And so here's how I do know how to ask you about it. Is that still okay? And they had a good reaction. They said, I knew that you were going to notice. And so it's just that. It's just saying, I really love you, and I really hope that you're hearing what I'm saying. And so coming back to that, it's okay to check in. And so, but you have to have that why and that relationship.
Yeah. There has to be mutual trust and to convey you're genuinely coming from a place of care. I like how you kind of guided us towards focusing on like health and not health as far aside, but just like general wellness, like mental health, and like I've noticed that you're stressed or whatever. Because then if you go straight to like weight, like you said, it could be a reward, or also it could lead to like a defensive shutdown, and then they might just get more
Because even if
sick.
it's gaining weight, now I'm going to go home and throw up.
Yeah.
Like, and so that's like that. And so it is about the concern of and that's where even health is, we should be able to say the word health and we don't just connotate weight with it.
Right.
Because health
Exactly.
means,
Yes.
And
like
so it's
just
like when I say
general
health,
wellness.
I care about your general health and wellness.
Your mental
and so,
health,
and that's
your
even,
spiritual health.
And diet, what's funny about the word diet even is we assume diet means whatever, and diet is literally what you eat. You could eat 12 burgers a day and that would be your diet. Diet is literally just what you eat.
Diet doesn't mean restriction.
Yes, diet does not mean, literally dictionary definition, diet does not mean restriction.
Oh, good.
And so taking back those words in the same way that the queer community has taken back the word queer and things like that, like we have to take back these words. Health, we have to take it back. Like diet, when I say diet, I am not talking about A, B, or C. I'm talking about, and learning that. Can I say food specifics with you? And do I have the relationship, or do you need me to be general? Because some people, I can talk about foods. You can talk about when I struggled and when I didn't, and what I eat now. The specifics, saying the food word and what's in the ingredients even doesn't. But I have a friend who would that would not be well. And so that's why you have to have that relationship, and why are the two biggest things. You can't. And that's why it is hard, because people might even interpret unless you know for certain you have that with somebody. So I wouldn't always suggest it be the parent talking to the kid. I wouldn't always suggest the sister or the brother, because maybe it's not them. Maybe it's not you. And so, and that would be my question too. My third question would be, do you feel like you are, if health is the actual concern, do you think that is there someone that that they trust, or maybe would be more comfortable than you, that you could tell and wouldn't share that business? Because they probably, if they know that person well, they probably already have the same concerns that you do. So if it were a me thing, and maybe someone, when my coworkers, well, maybe coworker's not good, someone a little closer to me than a coworker, I'd rather than maybe tell my girlfriend or my best friend RJ and say like, hey, I'm concerned, but I'm not quite sure I have that relationship with them. And maybe have you noticed that maybe I'm wrong? And then that gives them the opportunity to say, no, you're actually right. And so now someone who does have that mutual, they don't even have to know even. And so when you make it about actual concern, I think you walk carefully. I think you step more carefully when it's actually, that's the root of it for everything, but especially this. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think you have to address where you're coming from, because so much of us, even out of concern, is fat phobia. I'm a fat person and I have fat phobia.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. So, I ask everyone that comes on the podcast, what would you say if someone told you you were a bad, like, insert whatever identity is closest to you here? So, like, person, you said you don't necessarily identify as Christian anymore. Yeah, what if someone said you were
But even that, I can even answer as what I would have thought then. Like,
yeah, like a bad person, Christian friend, whatever. Because of your passion and care and
thoughts around,
thoughts around food and diet culture.
I think that I would say I would want to know why. I would, because I'm a conversation. I love to talk. So I'd be like, human response would initially probably be maybe a little bit defensive, but I think that I could ask why. And so what I would want to tell them is, almost like the Amy Pulver, what works for me does not have to work for you. And so I want to hear you, and I want to hear your concerns, or even if it's not a concern, but it's you're wrong about this, or even if it's a kind conversation. If someone said you're a bad person, Christian friend, whatever, I would want to hear them, because I love accountability, and I love that. And that's what you get out of community is accountability, or even a stranger, if it was a stranger. But I would say this really works for me, and I'm actually the healthiest, both mind, body, and spirit, that I've ever been. And so for me, I have to continue doing this, and this is what I've learned. And if you're interested, let me show you the research, and if you're interested, let me do this. And so I think, again, Christian Bri maybe would have different response. I think in that point in my life, probably a lot more defensive that would have been. But even then, because I've always sort of been the liberal Christian, let's just put it that way. And so even when people would ask me about that, my answer would be, Jesus to me, if we're talking about the Jesus that I grew up with, was intense, and he was radical, and he did love the least of these, what we consider the least of these. And so if Jesus loved the prostitute, the liar, the thief, the murderer, the tax collector, then I want to do that. And so if my beliefs about health and wellness and like loving people well line up with that, then I just have to feel good about that. And so I appreciate your comment. I appreciate concern. But for me, this is what this is what works for me. And so I honor that in you, but I have to also honor me. And that goes into boundaries. And that's a big thing for me in general, is the word no and learning, this is what's good for me, is a full sentence.
Yeah. Ooh, I love. Well, Bri, would it be okay if I end us today with a blessing to bless you and all of our baddies out there?
Yes.
Okay. Bri and all of you lovely baddies viewing or listening to this podcast episode, may you be wrapped in the knowledge that you are good and beautiful as you are. No matter what you eat, how you eat, when you eat, no matter what your body looks like, it is good. It is made good. You are good. And you don't need to earn love or anything to make you good. I don't know what I'm saying anymore, but yeah, you're beautiful. Amen.
Yes, second that. May the church say amen.
Yes, yeah. Gosh, well, thank you so much, Bri, for this conversation.
Yes.
This was awesome. That's all for this episode of Called to Be Bad. Keep being your bad, beautiful selves, and I will see you next time.